The UAE says it will invest $30 billion in South Korea in nuclear power, arms, and energy sectors. The deal marks the largest investment commitment secured between the UAE and any country. At least 68 dead in Nepal's worst air crash in 3 decades. 2 South Koreans were among the 72 passengers on board. Seoul's Foreign Ministry has set up a task force for overseas Koreans to handle the situation. Beijing has announced almost 60,000 COVID-19 deaths in China since the easing of virus restrictions last month. The country believes the peak of the wave has passed. We begin this Monday morning in Abu Dhabi, where President Yoon has wrapped up his day 2 of his 4-day state visit to the UAE. During the first bilateral between President Yoon and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the UAE pledged to invest $30 billion in South Korean industries. A presidential office bureau chief Moon Gun-young starts us off.
As UAE fighter jets paraded near the palace with red and blue smoke representing South Korean colors, President Yoon Suk-yeol met with his UAE counterpart Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan on the 2nd day of his state visit to the United Arab Emirates, the very first state visit to the West Asian country by a South Korean president.
이제 양국이 새로운 리더십을 가지고 한국과 UAE 관계를 더욱 확대 발전시켜 나가야 됩니다.
During the hour-long face-to-face, the UAE announced its decision to invest $30 billion in South Korean industries, the largest investment ever by the UAE in a single nation. That decision, the UAE president said, was based on his confidence in South Korea that keeps promises under all circumstances.
During the time our nations have worked together, we've written a success story in setting a global example in the peaceful use of nuclear energy.
The investment, expected to be directed at nuclear power, defense, hydrogen, and solar energy industries, among others, also includes the 13 memorandums of understanding signed at the summit. One is an agreement between the state-run Korea Development Bank and the Abu Dhabi state fund Mubadala to cooperate for investment in South Korean companies.
To ensure swift and flawless execution of the agreement, we will provide our full support by creating an investment cooperation platform between South Korea and the UAE. This will enable the two sides to share investment information and enter partnerships more smoothly.
Yoon and Sheikh Mohammed agreed that their in-person meeting this time will serve as a key starting point for the two countries to elevate their strategic partnership and expand cooperation in new areas such as space development, health, culture, and people-to-people exchanges. Moon Gun-young, Arirang News.
Following his summit talks with his UAE counterpart, President Yoon paid a special visit to South Korea's Akh Unit in the area. The unit has served as a symbol of a military cooperation between the two countries since its deployment 12 years ago. Our Kim Do-yeon is traveling with the president. He follows this report from Abu Dhabi.
President Yoon Suk-yeol on Sunday afternoon visited the Korean troops stationed in the United Arab Emirates, the Akh Unit, which has been there since 2011 to help train UAE special forces. Greeted by the 147 deployed men and women stationed just outside of Abu Dhabi, South Korea's commander-in-chief made clear the importance of their service.
여러분이 왜 UAE에 오게 됐느냐? UAE는 바로 우리의 형제 국가이기 때문입니다. 형제국의 안보는 바로 우리의 안보입니다. UAE의 적은 가장 위협적인 국가는 이란이고 우리의 적은 북한입니다. 두 나라는 서로 여러 가지 군사적인 협력을 하고 많은 군사적 정보 기술을 공유하고 있습니다. 우리와 UAE가 매우 유사한 그런 입장에 있습니다.
Akh means brother in Arabic. Among those accompanying him were the First Lady Kim Gun-hee, the ruling party's floor leader Chu Oh-young, and Yoon's national security advisor Kim Sung-han. This event also had an emotional moment as special messages for the soldiers from their families at home were delivered. As President Yoon left the base, he made sure to tell one Emirati leader that the unit was core to the brotherhood between the two countries. The move comes as President Yoon's office stressed that defense cooperation was one of the key items on the agenda for this trip, while another senior official said the unit has become symbolic of the military cooperation between the two countries. Having wrapped up his second day here with a visit to the Akh Unit, the president plans to continue his sales diplomacy for the remainder of his state visit, one of which will be a visit to the Baraka nuclear power plant. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Abu Dhabi.
So the UAE has decided to invest $30 billion in South Korea in the fields of nuclear power, arms, and energy. The investment boost comes as President Yoon Suk-yeol continues his state visit to the UAE. For more, we turn to our Professor Park Hyun-do, professor at the Seoul Europe Institute. Welcome, Professor.
Good morning.
Good morning. So let's start with Yoon's visit to the UAE. The visit itself is already meaningful enough that it's his first stop of his first overseas tour of the new year. He's also the first leader of South Korea or the UAE to visit the other country since 1980. So why is that?
As a matter of fact, the timing is quite right. Korea has concluded a special strategic partnership with the UAE, and UAE is the only and the first country that our country has concluded that agreement. And so far, our relation has been very good, but this year, particularly this year, and as both presidents actually took office last year in the same time in May, and they felt the urgent need to upgrade the relationship between these two countries. Particularly, these two countries are actually middle power and innovative powerhouse, and they can share a lot with each other. So this timing is quite right.
Right, and a lot was shared and still being shared and discussed during the summit between the leaders of Seoul and Abu Dhabi, being the economic cooperation on the focal point. Now, what's the biggest achievement or outcome of the tour so far?
Well, more than anything else, actually, the first historic, the state visit is very meaningful, and which actually shows how important the visit is. And also, as every news media actually talks about right now, the $30 billion investment in Korea by UAE is a huge amount of money. And normally the MOUs are concluded, and normally MOUs are MOUs, but I think the Arab Emirates, the UAE, will make the promises, and because UAE thinks Korea as a very special friend, because no other country in the world is willing to transfer its knowledge and technology to UAE, and Korea in that sense, Korea is the best partner for UAE. And also the Korea needs a lot of investment, and also the sharing technology, particularly hydrogen plants and the future energy resources abundant in UAE. That is really the golden spot for Korea too.
Sure, certainly South Korea does sound an attractive partner to UAE. Now, President Yoon's state visit goes into its third day now. Now, it will also include a visit to Baraka nuclear power plant that was built by South Korea. Now, what's the motive behind the move? What can we expect from that visit?
I think that probably the Korean government would like to expand more cooperation with the UAE over the building the facilities. But at the same time, actually, the Korea likes to have a very meaningful relationship with the UAE over the construction and new hydrogen plants. I think that probably our country likes to expand the nuclear programs further in order to upgrade our nuclear technology. But actually, that part, I'm not very sure, because actually other countries are also very interested in developing in that area. And the UAE is, in a sense, is a very good partner for us in nuclear power plant. But I don't know how many more can be built in the country, and particularly the neighboring countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt is also they are buying for nuclear the power. So a lot of actual discussion should be needed actually in order to advance our agenda.
That's right. Certainly a lot to come on the agenda. Thank you for your time this morning, Professor.
Thank you.
At least 68 people have been killed in a plane crash in Nepal. 4 others are missing, and at least 2 of the dead are reported to be South Korean. For more, we have our Kim Yeon-sung on the line. Yeon-sung, fill us in.
Tommy, at least 68 people were killed on Sunday in Nepal's deadliest plane crash in 30 years. 72 people were aboard this 27-minute flight that was heading from the capital, Kathmandu, to Nepal's tourist hub, Pokhara. Nepal's Civil Aviation Authority says that among the dead, at least 1 was an infant. 53 passengers and all 4 crew members were Nepali, while 15 passengers were foreign nationals, including 5 Indians, 4 Russians, and 2 South Koreans. One witness near the scene recalled the time of the incident as a thunderous crash. The plane crashed down into a river gorge, making the search and rescue mission even more challenging. 4 people are still missing, but due to the treacherous terrain, authorities have suspended the search after dark and will resume sometime this Monday. The reasons for the accident are not yet clear. According to data from flight tracking website flightradar24.com, the aircraft was about 15 years old and equipped with an old transponder with unreliable data. As there were 2 South Korean nationals who died in the crash, South Korea's foreign ministry has set up a protection task force for overseas Koreans and has dispatched local embassy officials to extend their help to the victims' families while helping authorities with the ongoing investigation. Arirang News will continue to provide updates in our later newscast. Back to you, Tommy.
Thank you, Yeon-sung. Please do keep us updated throughout the day. Now, moving on to the local front, about 40 vehicles collided on an icy highway near capital Seoul, leaving 1 people dead and 3 seriously injured. According to officials, the accident occurred as 10 vehicles were involved in a pileup on the Guri-Pocheon expressway in Gyeonggi-do province, prompting subsequent cars to crash. 14 others were also injured, with the number expected to rise. The exact cause of the accident is not yet known, but the authorities are pointing to the icy roads as a possible factor. Fire authorities mobilized some 130 officials to handle the situation. China announced Saturday that nearly 60,000 people had died in hospitals from COVID-19 since it abandoned its zero-COVID policy last month. Chinese health authorities say between December 8th and January 12th, the number of COVID-related deaths in Chinese hospitals stood at 59,938. But the total number of deaths is presumed to be larger, as the 60,000 figure does not include those who died at home. The World Health Organization welcomed the sharing of data by Beijing and voiced hope that the country will continue to do so. After nearly 3 years of COVID-19 pandemic disruptions, the 2023 Davos Forum will be held fully in person starting Monday. The forum means a return to the Swiss Alpine time for heads of state, leaders in business, finance, and culture, as well as philanthropists and members of civil society from 130 countries. The theme of this year's meeting is cooperation in a fragmented world. Participants look to address critical political, economic, and social issues that demand urgent attention. The Davos Forum this year runs from January 16th to the 20th. South Korea and the United States are taking their 70-year bilateral alliance into the future of warfare, upgrading their military ties with emerging technology. Our defense correspondent Oh Soo-young shows us what this means on the battlefield.
cutting through the fog and early January rain, and the rugged, muddy terrain close to the inter-Korean border. Some 800 South Korean and US troops take part in high-tech combat drills, preparing for the fast-evolving digitalization of warfare. It is the first joint training held by South Korea's Army Tiger Demonstration Brigade and the US Stryker Combat Brigade. South Korea's White Tiger and the US Stryker 8-wheeled armored vehicles synchronize their movements to enhance firepower, mobility, and survivability on the battlefield. Drones and unmanned aerial vehicles help collect intelligence, and anti-tank missiles are used in battlefield simulations. The forces run squad-level drills to attack and react to contact, build strong fundamentals at the lowest maneuver echelon in both daylight and during hours of low visibility. The 14-day exercise demonstrates how the two allies are keeping in lockstep with each other by syncing their warfare tactics with the latest technologies and armoured vehicles. Using artificial intelligence, cloud computing, drones and unmanned vehicles, the South Korean Army has been aiming to modernise and restructure its ground forces with cutting-edge technology through the Army Tiger 4.0, creating a demonstration unit last June.
Adopting hybrid combat systems, we've confirmed their effectiveness in ensuring our survivability, as well as identifying the enemy faster and striking more accurately.
With North Korea's recent provocations that display its growing asymmetric capabilities, joint efforts with the US Stryker Brigade are crucial to making the 70-year alliance smarter, swifter, and stronger.
I think, as we've seen in recent events, that the Stryker is very well suited to fight in the complex urban terrain and the complex rugged terrain that exists here on the Korean Peninsula. Because of our rapid maneuverability that we have as a wheeled platform, we can deploy quickly to any area of operations within the peninsula in a very short period of time.
Seoul plans to bring the Army Tiger Brigade into full operation by 2025 and eventually roll out the high-tech system across all combat brigades by 2040. Oh Si-young, Arirang News, Paju.
January 13th, which is last Friday, marked the 120th anniversary of Korean immigration. Since 1903, we've seen an exponential growth in the number of overseas Koreans across the globe. Our Song Yu-jin has more.
January 13th, 1903. The RMS Gaelic arrives in Honolulu, Hawaii at dawn. The first immigration ship carrying Koreans. How and why did they make that journey?
So this is where it all started, Incheon Port, also known as Jaemunpo Port, back in the early 1900s. And this was actually the country's largest port where more than half of its trade took place. But during this time, Koreans suffer from great political turmoil and also food shortages. And so from here, looking to support their families and seeking for a better life, 121 Korean immigrants boarded the Genkai Maru on December 22nd, 1902, and set sail for Hawaii.
The ship arrived in Nagasaki, Japan 2 days later. There, only 102 who passed physical examinations got on board the Gaelic. After arriving in Hawaii, most worked at sugar plantations for over 10 hours a day, providing relatively cheap labor. Following the first voyage, some 7,400 Koreans moved to the U.S. over the next 2 years. But this was only the start.
Koreans started new lives as independence activists in China, farm workers in Mexico, theatre actors in Russia, miners and nurses in Germany. Their destinations diversified, especially after the Emigration Act in 1962.
Currently, there are more than 7.3 million overseas Koreans across 193 countries. And now there are those who are working to continue this legacy. One is film director Lee Jin-young.
After living here for several years, I got to learn about this amazing Korean immigrant history, which was so very inspiring and very moving at the same time. I wanted my daughter and their friends to know how much love they have received, not just from their parents, but from ancestors.
There's also Korean-American Julia Ryu, who rose to stardom after her Korean folktale-based musical Simcheong went viral online.
I have so much more of an appreciation of the really hard work and difficult times that our grandparents went through in order to give their children and their grandchildren a better life, and I hope to be able to pass on that legacy.
Though spread across the globe, one thing will never change. We're all Koreans by heart. 송유진, 아리랑 뉴스.
For a look at the news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley joining us here in the studio. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Dami.
All right, let's start in the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, where dozens have been killed in a Russian missile strike on a residential building.
Well, that's right. As of Sunday local time, at least 30 have been confirmed dead as rescuers continue to search for survivors. Now, another 30 have been hospitalized, including 12 in serious condition, and at least 40 are reported missing. Officials expect the death toll to rise. The missile strike on Saturday hit a multi-story apartment that had previously housed some 1,700 people. It was part of 2 waves of missile attacks launched by Russia against targets across Ukraine. Russia on Sunday admitted to launching the missiles, but made no mention of striking the Dnipro apartment. Turning over to sports now, as South Korean tennis player Kwon clinched his second ATP Tour title. Now, he won the Adelaide International 2 on Saturday, beating Spanish player Roberto Bautista Agut in the final. Now, Kwon had actually lost the second qualifying match of the tournament, but was given a second chance after being selected as one of 2 lucky losers who replace injured players. Now, he made the most of this chance, emerging victorious in a nail-biting final that ended 6-4, 3-6, 7-6. The win is Kwon's second ATP title and means that the 25-year-old is now the first South Korean to win multiple ATP Tour titles. He will also climb to 52nd in the world rankings, a career best. Now, staying with sports, Chelsea Football Club have signed Ukrainian Mikhailo Mudryk in a $108 million deal. The Shakhtar Donetsk midfielder has signed an 8.5-year deal with the Premier League team. Mudryk, who has scored 7 goals over 12 league appearances for Shakhtar this season, was named the club's player of the season for 2 years running. The 22-year-old has also played 8 matches for the Ukrainian national team. Mudryk is the second Ukrainian player the club has ever signed, following Andriy Shevchenko in 2006. And finally, 190 kite enthusiasts from 69 countries gathered in the Indian city of Vadodara for the International Kite Festival. Now, the multi-day event sees hundreds of colorful kites fill the sky and marks the start of spring in India. It takes place every year from January 8th to 14th. Kite flyers from Australia, Canada, France, Germany and Egypt were among those who took part. This year's theme was based on that adopted by India's G20 presidency: One Earth, One Family, One Future.
Good morning. A massive winter storm has battled the east of Gangwon-do province for the last 3 days as mountainous regions saw more than 60 centimeters of heavy snow, with a number of weather-related incidents reported in the area. Well, the snow is letting up, but do expect to see light flurries through the morning hours. Now, the greater issue is freezed temperatures. The snow and ice is likely to remain frozen, so please be extra careful out on the roads. And cold wave alerts issued again for some of upper parts, and morning temperatures are 5 to 7 degrees lower than the same time yesterday. And of course, feels like temperatures are a lot colder this morning. Dress extra warmly for the day. The cold snap is likely to stay all day. Seoul will only see a high of -1 degree Celsius. Daegu, Gyeongju topping out at 4 degrees Celsius under sunny skies with decent air quality today. The cold snap eases as the week goes on. Then Thursday's precipitation brings even colder air to the country, and it looks to be a freezing Seollal holiday this year. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Tuesday's edition at the same time. Thanks for watching.